You can run, but you can't hide. Can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. Can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday. It's 9 p.m. and we got a lot of NBA Finals talk and a live game. So maybe slide in a few updates for you guys throughout the show. But it's top of the key. And I'm joined by the two Mikes, Mike and Mike here, the con man and Mike Simeo. I think I said that wrong. And if I did, Mike, I apologize.
We're good. We're
Um,
okay.
but hey, we're here to talk some NBA. We had a big release happen this week. We'll have some thoughts on that. And of course, we got to talk about games 2 and 3 that happened since we were last together here on the show last week. Con, what's going on, man?
What's going on, my man, Cool?
And we got Con ready to go, ready to rock. No issues tonight. We are killing it.
We're good tonight. We are good tonight.
Yes, sir. And then we got the man Mike back for a second week to give us some more of that insight and a different, way to look at these things. So definitely appreciate having you back as well, Mike.
Great. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. No problem. All right. So, guys, first thing, of course, that we have to talk about, Chris Paul was released, right? Shockwaves throughout the league to some people. Some people like myself were kind of like, well, I mean, I expected this to come when they weren't able to capitalize on the situation they had. As far as, the playoffs, they made the trade for Kevin Durant. But then we saw Chris Paul get injured. And then when he was out, they really didn't miss a beat. So you're kind of like, well, we didn't miss a beat without him. We're paying him a lot of money. Add, two things together, and this should be your outcome. So we'll start with you, Mike. Any thoughts on the Chris Paul situation, where you think he may go? Do you think it was a good move for him to leave? And then on the flip side, what will Phoenix do at the point guard position, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's a good move for the franchise. One, you have some salary cap relief there. But also, I think one of the things that has come out of what you saw at the end of last season was that they really didn't have any bench help. And they still have some other moves I believe they need to make inside, because just because of the issues that took place in the playoff run with them, you can really see their personalities come out. So I think that by him going, that gives them a little bit more flexibility to actually kind of build that team. And as we talked last time, right, we were talking about new ownership, that particular person having their hands on things. A lot of, it's a very dynamic situation with them at this point. So I think it's a nice move for them, because Chris, unfortunately, just can't seem to get to the finish line. And one, for his team to win, and also him physically, he just breaks down. And I think there's a lot of minutes on that body, and that's really tough for him. And it ends up being tough for that franchise. Where I think he goes is three. I was looking at this, and I think I thought of three possibilities. And they all sort of relate to having some veteran leadership that he could supply. One might be Memphis, that I thought of just because of what is going on there with their prime player, right? So if Zion can get on the field, if he can get himself in shape and stay healthy, there might be a role for him there as a mentor, right? To actually see as a professional what needs to be done. You and I talked last week about the gap in Boston, right? As far as having that guy that can make decisions with the ball in his hands. Right now, I don't know the personality fit for him in Boston, because there's some pretty strong personalities, as we saw in the playoffs, right? Good or bad. In the last spot sort of mirrors Memphis, which I thought might be Sacramento. You've got a young team, you've got young guards there. So again, giving him an opportunity to actually be a mentor. He wouldn't have to play a lot of minutes there. He could play some effective minutes. So that's where I think see him going, and what the franchise is going to do, and for the future of the player in that particular franchise.
Want to shout out Daniel Berry real quick. What's up, Daniel? Hits us with the yo.
What's up, Daniel?
All right, Con. Let's have
Well,
it.
you know something. I of course, I got to agree with my man Mike. The reason why they let him go was because of financial issues regarding the salary cap. He's going to put a strain on their salary if he remained, and I think if they get rid of him, it's like only a $15 million hit as opposed to maybe $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the major reasons. I don't see him going. I think he'd be a good role model for Memphis. I don't see him going to the Celtics because they went and got Malcolm Brogdon for that same reason. So I don't see him going there. If you ask me, I think he might be better suited for the Lakers, and I'm gonna explain why. First of all, and the first time in his career, he gets to play home. Now, if you remember, the Lakers were supposed to get him way back in the day, but the commissioner nixed that up. And I think the fact that with his age, he's not going to be required to do that much. Maybe he can come off the bench, provide stability, provide leadership. I think it might be the best chance for him to get a chip. And with his outstanding career, I think that might be the best move. Now you got two leaders on the team. You got LeBron and you got him. Now, I'm not projecting him to be a starter, but coming off the bench, I think he can be a major factor in the Lakers' upcoming year.
So for me, I would say this about the Lakers. Theoretically, great move. But you're going to add injured LeBron, who takes time off, injured AD, and then you're going to add injured Chris Paul.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
That would be my only thing as far as if we're looking at, and I agree with what you're saying, but if we're looking at just talent or how they would fit together, Paul and LeBron have a relationship off the court.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the caveat: if you're going to the Lakers, is LeBron going to succeed ball handling and allow you to be a point guard, or is he going to want to be that kind of point forward? And he's a little, getting his twilight years. So I think that would depend on the move. And then also the thing with Chris Paul is money. Is he going to be attempting to recoup some of that money from being released, right? From any years that weren't guaranteed on his money, or is he more like, I'll take $8 million or whatever to go somewhere and win a championship or try to win a championship? So a couple of places that I think he could help. I think he would be a steadying force in Miami. I definitely think if you were to put him on that team, you keep Kyle Lowry too, and just go to OG at the point guard position, right? But I think he would be a good fit there. They have enough depth, enough guys that are not making a lot of money there, that you could absorb a reasonable contract for Chris Paul. I think also, like Mike was saying earlier, Memphis would be a great fit alongside Ja. And also, Ja's going to be out for probably at least half of the next season.
Yeah.
So bringing in a guy who can, kind of either be the starter or the backup behind Ja's backup would be a wise decision. And then another place I can think of course, is Boston. I agree with Boston. But if you think about teams who need a point guard, right? You think about teams who are really good, but they need a point guard. This is a wild one. I said this earlier. The San Antonio Spurs with Victor Wembanyama. If he's as good as people say he is.
Ooh, I never thought of that one.
You give him a guy that can teach him, right? Feed him. Chris Paul's probably got a couple of years left. And if Wembanyama is as good as they say, then you're going to have some guys that might say, well, Chris Paul's there, Wembanyama's there. You may have some of these other older veterans that don't have a ring or want to have one more opportunity to get a ring, slide down and be part of the organization. And Pop can coach. So just a wild card. I was thinking about
that. That's a good thought because Chris Paul can teach I can't pronounce his name, you know me, to be a true professional, how to become an NBA ball player. I think that would be good for a young kid like that. to learn the ropes from someone who's been around for 100 years, that would be a good person to learn from. So,
Did he say
you know,
100 years?
I mean, he could, you know me, my name might get us off the air, but I think it'd be a great move. I think maybe the question should be what we think, but what about what you think he thinks? And ultimately, that's going to be the major factor.
Yeah, it's about winning for him. It's got to be somewhere, I think, where he has a great opportunity to win. Sleeper pick from a really good team. You may, if the money works, you may see him go back up Jrue Holiday in Milwaukee.
Ooh.
And you know who else is going to need a point guard if they're smart? The Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, because things may change pretty soon. You know what I mean? Things could definitely change pretty soon. So that's always a possibility too. It's going to be
Nick
interesting.
Nurse does not want James Harden. I'll tell you that right now. If you saw his introductory press conference, Mike, did you get the same impression? It doesn't sound like Nick Nurse wants James Harden on the team.
No, most definitely not. No. But I do want to throw something out there. How does the Kyrie option in where he's going to go impact Paul? I understand they're different players, different ages, different talent levels. But I wonder, how the chess pieces play out. Who moves first? Who waits on a decision? And I do, you mentioned that Milwaukee, as an option. I really like that. It's an interesting choice. I really like, and if there's pieces to be left actually to kind of get them over the hump, and I don't mean get them over the hump once. Maybe that's a 2-year window with him, as you mentioned, as far as his age and what he has left. But I'm curious as to what Kyrie's going to do and where he's going to go, and how much that impacts not just Paul but other players about what's going to happen.
Here's the indication from what I've been hearing and reading. Kyrie was trying to recruit LeBron, which he can't do because LeBron's under contract. But Kyrie wants a 4-year deal with a max, or sort of what he was almost making originally. He's not going to get there anywhere else. If we're talking about money, his best bet is to stay in Dallas, because that's where he can get the most money and he can get that 4-year contract. That's what I think.
Yeah, that makes sense, right, Matt? The math works there for him, and I don't really see anybody else kind of entering the picture here that's going to really roll the dice with him. I can't see that now.
Who wants to deal with that headache?
No.
What's up, boss?
Key, what's going on? And then, Con, this is for you. Come on, Mike Con, let's hear the best sports talk. Your boy Tim P right here.
Oh, it's my dog. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
And yes, Key, we got Mike back on. We're trying
Yes,
to
we
get
do.
Mike a little bit more airtime here so he can give us that great analyzation, Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, so guys, one other quick point. Now that you brought up Kyrie, what if Kyrie decides that he wants to go play with his bestie again in Phoenix?
You know what happened when he was in Brooklyn? That's why James Harden left, because of Kyrie and his how could I put it? Interesting stuff off the court, and his ways he goes about things, and the fact that he's kind of the one that brought KD to Brooklyn. I don't think that might be a good fit, him going to play with Kyrie. With Durant. But if he did, if they could get along, that would be unbelievable. But again, it goes down to the money issue. As far as I'm concerned, and the money won't be right. So that's what I thought. It would be great. On paper, it'd be great. They'd be unstoppable. But I think that his best move, like we said, stay right where he's at.
Mike,
Yeah, So I think that's true. I don't think that's a good fit with Booker there, and if the move is to let Paul go to actually build a team, right? Deal with some of what the holes that you have. Like I said, you still have to address the big guy. What are you going to do with him, right? And what's happening there? So so I don't think that's the right fit for him. I just think there's too much baggage there to actually bring him to your team and expect that it's all going to work out. All the pieces and everything's going to align, and it seems like it does with him for a little bit of time. Then all of a sudden something happens. So again, a new owner, I don't think he wants that headache. I really don't. I think he's trying to develop, and he wants his hands on this. He wants to develop that franchise. He's trying to create some stability and some depth with it. Because I think he sees what needs to be done, and I don't think it's Kyrie. I really don't.
Yeah, I kind of question, and this is not on the court, because on the court Kyrie still has a lot to offer, but I kind of question how many places would really be interested in bringing Kyrie in.
Not many. Not many.
No, not at this point. Not at this point. I just think there's too much time, and there's too much collateral damage every place he goes. And and to be honest, looking back at the Boston situation, that franchise was still dealing with that last season and the season before after he left, right? The holes that were there and the decisions that were made, and there's some other things that happened. But nobody really wants that. There's too much at stake. The league is too competitive. The money's too big to want to be dealing with that.
Fair enough. So, guys, we're here to do those breakdowns of game 2 and 3. So we're going to start with game 2. How do I want to word this? I'm trying to push the fan aside for a moment, right, and just talk about it. So talk to us. So we'll start with you, Mike. Talk to us about what you saw in game 2. Did it meet your expectations? And after game 2, did it change how you felt about the series?
So I did some reflection on our conversation last week about not having much data or any impacts or any results, just game 1. And now it's hard to go forward and figure out what was going to happen. And you had made a comment about there were a lot of open shots by both teams that were missed in the first game. And what ends up happening in the second game, that dynamic starts to change, right? And the same formula happens where that fourth quarter was a decision making as far as what was really going to take place as far as the result. And that was what occurred in game 1, right? So when that happened. So my thoughts were, I'm seeing the reverse from game 1, right? And this is what you expect when you're looking at a series. You're looking at all these little moves, all these different motivations and chess pieces that come into play. And then all of a sudden, the other team starts to emerge that got beat down in the first game because they didn't play well. And there were some other issues there, but they made that run, right? They made that run into the fourth quarter, and they made it a little interesting. So now we have it where they're actually moving away from Denver, and Denver looks like we're asleep. We look flat. We're making bad decisions. We're not playing defense. And I thought, again, in that situation, Miami just played with much more energy, and they were much more effective going in. And how it made me think of the impacts for the rest of the series was, okay, I've got 2 games, and I get 2 games that I can look at. They look similar for 3 quarters, but that the fourth quarters look a little bit different in each of them. And that sort of starts in my mind. I'm thinking, well, that's how it's going to play out for the series, where we're going to have this kind of toss-up of games where you're not going to have someone winning 2 games in a row. It's going to go back and forth, it seems, just because of the personnel, just because of how they're playing. And I think part of this is, I think I may have mentioned this last week, where these are 2 new franchises relatively in the finals, especially Denver, right? So that pressure, the expectation that's there. So the spotlight is on them. It's in a different spotlight than the playoffs and in regular season. I think we all know that. But for them as players and that organization, again, you're getting micromanaged as you go. Now, what happens with the coach after game 2, which was interesting, the way he called out his players. I thought that was a big deal for them as far as what that looked like and put them on the line. So we can talk about the next game, game 3, in a second, but that was my impression was, you know what? They got called out. They didn't play well. and they had played really not well in the fourth quarter in both games, but they got away with it in game one.
Yeah, and real quick, Cheap Grand 19 says every team Kyrie has landed, it's the last place he's going to play, according to him. I think he's definitely far on the back nine of his career, and I don't think he's worth the headaches. Hey, I don't disagree with any of that. Not at all. Con, talk to us about game two. I know you got a lot of that Con man insight for us.
I'm going to break it down real quick. I think the coaching has been fantastic. In game one, if you guys remember, Max Strus went 0 for 7. And the coach said, look, next game, we're going to get you off from the beginning, from the get-go, get you in order. And that made a world of a difference as far as the ability to shoot the three, the confidence level. I think that made a major impact on that game. It's, again, as I always say, it's a chess game. Who's going to make the next move? They go over the films. They go look, they got broken down every single category, 3-point shots, offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds. So I think the coaching plays a major impact in how and what changes they make and what they do to circumvent how they're going to play. And I think the coaching has been remarkable. And I think they're, like Mike said, Denver's coach called his players out, made a major impact. They weren't playing with no effort, and look how they came out. We'll talk about game 3, but look how they came out. Game 2, I think, first of all, game 1, Miami just came off a real hard 7-game series with the Celtics. Didn't have much time to travel, the altitude. I think that played a major part in game 1. Game 2, I think they got more acclimated to the altitude, and I think they, obviously they came up to play real strong, and they gave the effort. And again, I don't want to emphasize more than enough, but the coaches, to me, I'm more impressed with the coaching and how they're doing what they do to make their teams better, even if that means calling out, doing the damn thing, and it's working so far.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the points that you both made. Me and Mike talked last week, and I was saying, like, man, Denver really needs to be up 2-0 so that when you go to Miami, you kind of have those 2 games.
Right.
So Denver lost game 2. So for me, in game 2, I'm like, where was the defense? Where was the hustle?
Mm-hmm.
Mike Malone, you kind of stood over there looking mad, calling the timeout and kind of trying to regroup the guys. But overall, I definitely have to agree with Con with how great I think the coaching is from game to game. They're making great adjustments from half to half and quarter to quarter sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the early rounds, right? It's still, using boxing metaphor, they're still like in, the first couple of rounds, you're still filling each other out. Both guys are still kind of fresh. No one's really swollen or cut up yet. Nobody's spitting out blood yet. It's just kind of, we're seeing how things are going. But this game is pivotal. And it was pivotal because Miami needed to come out and say, we can win in Denver, right? Because no one had done that in the playoffs. In the playoffs, Denver was undefeated. So in game 2, Miami came out and said, we're going to give you an elbow to the face. You're going to take this one. We're winning this game in Denver. So now Denver's like, oh, wait a minute. We've actually lost at home for the first time in the playoffs. Extra motivation. They go to game 3. They do. So I've been chastised by my fellow Nuggets fans in Nuggets Nation, one of the different Nuggets groups I'm in, because I said, to me, game 3, it was a solid game, but it wasn't great. Right? We can be much better. So, I got a little slack for that. Also, I think that overconfidence can hurt you a lot. Just feeling like, oh, we're undefeated at home. We're going to find a way to bring it out. Jamal's going to hit that 3 at the end of the game, send it to overtime, and then we're going to win. Don't put that on your guys every time. Go out there and play, make all these possessions count. A lot of careless turnovers by Denver. They still didn't cover defensively like they have and how I know them to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to show what you are when you have the stage. Game 2, we showed what we should not be. And that's kind of, why Miami took advantage and they did what they were supposed to do in that situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I absolutely, I really agree with that, because that was something that I think you and I had been almost holding your breath on coming out of game one. Was that an aberration as far as what took place in the fourth quarter, or are we going to see this coming forward? So, it changes in game three just because, again, it's that chess piece again. It's those chess moves that take place that Michael made reference to, where, we'll go into that in a second, but that's the nature of the playoffs, right? That's what you expect. You expect adjustments, as to your point earlier, adjustments throughout the game, but the large adjustments really come the day off, right? As far as what's really taking place, everybody can kind of catch their breath, look at some film, and start making decisions as far as what you're going to do. Now, what the weird thing is, to your point, I don't think we've seen both teams play well in the same game yet, right? It seems like it is one or the other. So we haven't seen that great game yet. And so we haven't seen a consistent, I'm just going to use the word intensity by both teams. We haven't seen it together. We haven't seen it play out yet together. And I'm waiting for that.
Makes sense. All right. So while we're on it, let's go ahead and talk about game three. Conman, you start us off.
Well, Denver, man, I tell you, that big guy, the Joker is no joke. He proven that point. I mean, triple-double. Only time it occurred when you had, two players on the same team making a triple-double. I think that outstanding. I think, again, Denver didn't play their best game, but they played a better game, again, due to the fact of the adjustments. And the key is, to me, is that if Miami can't shoot the three, they're not going to win. And another thing, playoff Jimmy, he's 6'7". The front line of Denver's 6'10" and taller. He's having a little bit more difficulty getting to the cup. And as you can see, that's why he's going to the foul line, because he can't really do what he normally does. And I think that's posing a big problem. And again, the loss, not having Hero, I think that's a major factor as well. But Denver, I like the way they play. I like the way they pass the ball around. They're very unselfish. I think that duo, because a lot of the duos end up not really getting along, and they go their separate ways. I think the Joker and Murray's going to be around for a long time. They generally like playing with each other. I think that makes a difference. They really do like playing with each other. And I think that might be the ultimate difference as well.
I'm with it.
But before we get to Mike, the one question I do want to ask you, I might be going a little ahead of time, but if Denver were to win the championships, and I know, Koo, that's your team, that Denver has a few players that need to have their contract extended. What difference is that going to make? And now they have an owner who's been very fiscal responsive. And matter of fact, this year is the first year, if I recall, that they went over the salary cap. Will he continue to do that?
Well, I think you can. You got a couple of guys that you're not using, right? That you brought in via trade that are going to be free agents. You got a guy like Bruce Brown who kind of seems to love it here and has found a place where he can be the player he wants to be. First of all, I want to say if we win, I am going to cry. Okay, I'm going to cry. I don't care who laughs at me, whatever. If we win this series, I'm going to cry. And I'm not talking about like a few tears. I'm talking about the ugly kid cry. But I think that's the reason why we made I don't know if you saw it, but we made like a little trade with Oklahoma City. We're going to get their first round pick next year, and then a couple of second round picks, and they're going to get our first round pick in like 6 years. So this makes sense for both teams because Oklahoma City gets an opportunity to offload one of those billion first round picks they have and gain one after most of their first round picks are gone. Denver gets a chance to get another guy on a rookie contract, right, which will help with that cap. They can bring in just to be a piece. He didn't have to come in and be great from year one. Just come in and be a piece, learn for a couple of years, and then we'll see what happens once he kind of matures a little bit. So I think that's one of the reasons that we're making simple, like slick moves like that. Nothing big, but really a salary cap dump. Because now we can bring in two more guys on rookie deals. We can keep some of the guys that we feel comfortable with, but at the same time, we can say, you know what, we're preparing things because we understand that everyone may not be back. So I think that's where things are for Denver at this point. Um, some of the contracts will get done. I don't think if we win a championship, I don't think our ownership would have a problem. So we'll go ahead and pay this tax again, and keep some of these guys. But I think some of these guys are going to move that are not being a part of the series right now, which will open up a little bit of money, open up some spots, and then this is only our second year, so I think we still have the mid-level exception that we could use on one of those guys. Because I think once you get in third year is when you lose that. But good question, Con. It's tough. I'm so focused on can we do it right now? That this is the first time I've ever thought about what happens after the season. But that is a great question.
I do think that move that took place this week was actually significant for them, because that tells you that the window that they have to be a contender or a champion is going to be open for a little while, because they're looking to supplement that roster, and that's great forecasting for them, where you don't want to just be the one-off, right? You want to be able to be sustainable going forward, and that kind of fiscal responsibility that they're going to have coming out of the CBA. I do have something I want to talk about real quick later on about that. So that's going to be interesting for them as far as what takes place, as far as those draft picks and other moves they may make down the line to actually try to keep that team whole, or that core whole, as they look to the future.
Definitely makes sense. Any other thoughts on Game 3, Mike?
I do, and I keep on going back to our conversation from last week when we were talking about.
It's a good conversation.
Yeah.
Yes. How you guys?
Defensively, right? I think Denver changed, right? When you start looking at what they were missing from Game 2, that adjustment that they made, right? That you looked at how they played screens well in Game 3. They closed out players. They chased guys down. So they were there to defend and they were there to disrupt. And that I think just comes down to effort, right? So I used the word intensity before. That was a big difference. And it was right from the beginning, you could tell that there was a big difference, and Miami just didn't have it, right? It wasn't going to happen for them in Game 3. But I just noticed, again, we started talking about kind of those intricacies of defense, as far as, are we shading? Are we going under? Are we going over? What are we doing? And they just did it all very, very well. And what Miami didn't do well was they didn't contain Murray at all. He kind of did what he wanted to do off of screens and taking guys to the basket. So, that opened up either scoring opportunities for him directly, or be able to get some assists, as you saw with the triple-double. So that I thought was the big adjustment. And never mind the fact of the rebound differential in that game. And again, that's effort, right? And that's what it comes down to. So I think there is that adjustment that Denver made in between games and losing at home. So there's, again, the coach calling them out, losing at home. There was a lot on the line for them in Game 3 to kind of reestablish themselves and say, look, we're the favorite here. So we have to bring it every game, but that's a level of intensity that's going to take to win the series, I believe.
Enough said.
I completely agree. Right? For me, for Game 3, we could be better. We still.
You're a tough fan, man. Honestly.
Hey, I am, man.
He is.
The defense. Some numbers sounded good, but when you actually watch the game, if you sit back and watch the game, which I definitely do, defense needs to be better. And we had an amazing, all-time performances from Jokic and Murray. We had Christian Brown step up in a way that I didn't expect. Right, happy it happened, but I didn't expect. But there's other people in the team, and defensively they were better. But you couldn't get much worse than Game 2. Dominance, right? We haven't had a dominant game yet, right? We've had some games where we were okay, like you said earlier, Mike, when Miami wasn't playing well. Neither one of us is really that good in Game 1. I think we had the edge because of the home court, the altitude, as Khan said earlier, a couple of other things. But that, excuse me, really was not that much of a blowout or of any kind of game one. Game one was, oh, we won, thank God we won, honestly, kind of game. Denver had been off for some time, right? Because they were just sitting back, relaxing. So you had Miami coming off a long series, but then you had Denver like just chilling for like a couple of weeks. So it's like,
Mhm.
which one is better? It seemed to be Denver having a little rest period, but not by much. So, that series going to seven, I think definitely did help. Because I think one of the things in the series, Jimmy Butler's legs are gone.
Mm.
Yeah,
He's had to
definitely.
put too much on his back, and at some point, you can't continue to do so. But a lot of other guys on that team have stepped up. They are at home, so you expect guys to play better at home as well. It's been a tight game all night so far. Um, it'll be a tough series, right? Even if we win this in 5 games, this will be one of the toughest 5 game series we've ever seen, because this Miami team will not go away for us or anybody else. They have it all playoffs. Think about it. They went up 3-0 on Boston, lost 3 games in a row, then came back in Boston in game seven and beat them down at home. This is not a team that's going anywhere. They're not scared of us or anybody else. They're just sometimes being outplayed, you know, in key moments, and sometimes they've outplayed in key moments. We've just been lucky because we could easily be up 3-0 right now. We could easily be down 2-1. I mean, 1-2 right now, right? So just happy that things have fell in the way that they have for Denver for the most part in those first 3 games, but also understanding that it's close. Um, Other guys seem to be doing well tonight. The combination that I led to, Mike, you remember talking about from last week. Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. need 30 to 35 points together, not separately, but together. If you get that, Murray gets his customary 25, Jokic gets his 28, 30 ish or whatever. That gives you 4 guys giving you almost 100 points. If you can get that, and then you have other guys just make a couple of shots, make a couple of plays, you're scoring enough to beat a Miami team that suffers to score, especially without Tyler Hero. And then with Jimmy Butler's legs just not holding up as much. I mean, he's still playing well, don't get me wrong, but we're not seeing Hemi Butler, as people were calling him in the last series. We're not seeing him be able to put up 30, 40, 50-point games against Denver. So, a couple of things I think the defense has a part to do with that as well. But always adjustments. Spoelstra's adjusted from game 3 to the night. There's always going to be adjustments on both sides. But I'm happy again. I say this a lot, that it's a great series. The most important part is having a great series,
Exactly.
because then that lets the NBA know, let the guys just play. Don't try to fix the outcomes of games. Just let the guys play. Whoever gets there, people will watch. And that's important. And that's why I want the series to be great, because that's important. The viewership, who's watching, who's going, who's talking about it, all those things are just as important as the teams that are in it. So hopefully that continues. And I think Miami is a formidable foe for any team. Yes, any of the teams in the East, how good Miami is.
I agree. And the fact is, it's good seeing two different teams playing. You know what I mean? I think it
Mhm.
brings great support for the NBA and shows how great the NBA is and how great it's going to be. I think it's a great thing. I think we should all be excited that, it's not just the same old 4, 5, 6 teams. And, I think
Mhm.
it's going to improve even more because if you notice, some of the weaker teams are getting stronger and stronger. Some teams that were good went down and they're going to probably go back up again, like New Orleans, like maybe San Antonio this year. So I think it's good for the NBA. That's what I think. I think it's positive.
Scoot Henderson needs to go to Charlotte, because Charlotte, when you were saying that, I was thinking Charlotte's not.
Ooh, ooh,
I'll tell you the reason that I say Scoot Henderson is because he's a driver, he's dynamic, he's another playmaker. So LaMelo can do what he does best and allow another guy to be there that will finish at the rim, but also can help handle the point guard duties, can play the guard when LaMelo's off the floor, which frees you up to be like Terry Rozier's, a piece that you make in trade for another draft pick or a big, right? So that's the team that I'd like to see. I'm in Charlotte, so that's why we're talking about Charlotte Hornets. That's the only reason why, because there's no other reason to talk about Charlotte Hornets. But I just think that would help the team. And of course, they have the number 2 pick, so they have their pick of guys after the so-called block in Victor Wembanyama. So, I mean, that's the way I think they should go, because I think you build by saying, what do I have and what can I bring in via my draft pick that can help right away. Because the other guy, I think Brandon Williams from Arkansas, he's another shooter. So you're just being repetitive. So there's teams out there that could use what Brandon Williams does completely. But not a team that already has a guy that plays almost like that, but plays the point guard position. So just a quick tidbit. Since Khan was talking about teams that have gotten better, and maybe think about how Charlotte is not one of those teams.
Again, I had brought this up before, and I think it's going to come to fruition again. The projected 4 out of the 5 top picks, one overseas, but the other ones are coming from the G League. So my point being, again, what do you think? Again, I'm gonna ask because now it's coming to fruition again. These guys who've gone maybe 2, 3, 4 years in college, but they may say, man, I could take a quicker route by going to the G League out of high school, maybe just playing 1 year, and end up being a top 3, 4, 5 pick in the NBA draft.
Well, you could kind of do that one and done thing in college too, right? The difference is, I think, with the G League, if you're on that was the Ignite team, they pretty much groom you to go to the league the next year. Not necessarily saying you get there in 1 year, but they're pretty much saying, hey, these are the guys that we think are young. They could be in the league. They just need a little bit more season, and they got to play that year to make it happen.
And they also play a pro-style offense in the G League as well, in preparation for the NBA. Exactly.
And then the other thing, too, is if you're not playing for one of the better college basketball organizations, it can get a little tricky, right? Like, I don't know if it's Williams or Miller. I always mess up Brandon. I think it's Brandon Miller, though, his name, from Arkansas. So that's not a basketball school, but he made it a basketball school from the way that he plays, right? What he was able to bring, how good he was up until they got deep into the playoffs, and then you kind of saw him have that bad game. And once you have one bad game in the tournament, we know how that goes. But I think that's a good point, though, Khan, just because it's crazy how it's just ridiculously competitive, even for these young guys. These guys can go to the league after 1 year right now. They can go to the G League. They can go overseas. All these routes are helping different guys develop. As long as you take the route that's best for you, I think it's a great move.
Yeah, I think the diversity and the opportunities that exist now are so much greater for a player, much greater for organizations to look at and trying to figure out, is that the right player for our organization, right? So you're not just dealing with the draft, you're dealing with a worldwide commodity at this point. And so that is going to continue to change and continue to expand, for the immediate future until you start to have teams that start to land in Europe, right? You start to have teams coming out of Europe that are part of the league, right? That becomes a worldwide sport. I think that's way down the line, but I think that's where we're going to go. And I think it's where you're going to go in some other sports too. So, I think the opportunities that are there and the opportunities to develop talent is what they've been looking for a while, because I think you end up having, to Michael's point, when you had the one and done, you're getting a physical person, right? But you're not potentially getting somebody that's clearly their skill set's not there yet, right? They're going to develop, and you're going to have to pay them a lot of money to develop. So the G League comes in and says, okay, we can take you, we can develop you. We have some money to spend, but we're not giving you $2 million, $3 million to do this, right? So you're learning on the fly, you're learning on the job, but it's a different path. It's a different route for them, where it potentially doesn't have that pressure, right? That expectation is a little bit less than if you're a guy coming to the NBA and you can't get off the bench because you're 19, 20 years old. I played 1 year of school, or maybe I didn't go to school. I'm just coming out of high school, so I'm really struggling here with all of this. And how many of those stories have we heard where guys haven't made it? And the window in the NBA is short, right? That's not a big window any longer, right? As far as we make decisions pretty quickly because it is competitive, right? And we want to be competitive as far as where we are as a franchise and where we are as a team. So those long-term situations don't exist anymore. They know pretty quickly, right? They know based on, are they coming to the gym on time? Are they working hard in practice and working out? So they can tell quickly. And we don't have those eyes, but you can see what's being put out in the press. You can read what's really taking place, and what's going to happen, right? If And again, it's a very small percentage that make it and are successful. So again, just another line of diversity for those franchises and players and really their families also.
Now, also, it can be a positive, but it can be a detriment. And here's what I mean by that. Now, Mike, you said it's harder to make the NBA. To me, it's harder to stay in the NBA.
Yes.
For the simple reason.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because you got the G League. So now, I think whereby when you got drafted, whatever, they may give you a 2-3 year pass. Now,
Right.
yo, you're gone. So you're not going to have as many opportunities to make it. And once you make it, can you stay?
Yeah, because once you make it, you still got to outshine all these new guys that's coming in wanting your
Sure.
spot.
Every year.
Want to shout out Freddie real quick. What's up, Freddie? He's watching us. And
What's
then
going
another
on,
comment
Freddie?
from Khan, man. Khan must be the guy. The Khan is the man. From
That's my
Chops
man,
Turner.
Chops Turner. You know it.
Hey, man. Khan, man, getting all the shout outs in here, man. This is top of the key this is Con Man's top of the key. That's what this is.
Do we have T-shirts with that? Are we getting mugs with that on it too?
Hey, we'll negotiate after the show.
But yeah, man, it's been a really great NBA season. We'll do definitely at least one more show right before the season's over, depending on how the finals play out. And then we could do a review episode if y'all want, where we just, it might, you want to come on, you won't. But just at least a couple more episodes when we review and kind of talk about how the season progressed, how the season played out, kind of wrap it up, and then we'll give a little hiatus to the show. And then once we hit the start of the NBA season next year, we'll be back strong.
It'll be off the hook.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Anytime comments in the building is gonna be off the hook. But yeah, so Mike, I know you had something else you wanted to touch on, so feel free, man. Let us have it.
So I was this came out of the commissioner's office, right? When the talking about the CBA and talking about what he's attempting to do and what he's looking at to have happen financially with these other organizations and franchises, right? That is actually looking to make the league more competitive, to try to give those other teams the opportunity. And that's why the CBA was structured the way it was structured, right? So it reminded me quickly of what the NFL has done, right? The NFL has how many teams sitting at the playoff level that are all contending, and the league loves that, right? That is actually has this real competitive line to it. And the NBA is moving in that direction, right? And he made that very clear. So I wanted to get both of your thoughts on that, because it's interesting the way this has evolved over time, where you've had the haves and the have-nots, and he's trying to squeeze that to the middle to say, we want everybody to be competitive, have the same opportunities. Now, again, you have that curve where you have people making bad decisions in these franchises over time. You can't account for that, right? You can put the money there. You can build the structure for this. So I'd be very interested to hear both of your comments about what the league looks like based on that.
Well,
Con, you want to take it first?
Go ahead, boss.
Oh no, go ahead, Con.
In my opinion, Mike, you got some of these owners who are multi-billionaires, and then you got some owners who don't have the fiscal
Capital
possibility that other teams have, and that poses a problem. Like, look at the Warriors. Look how much they are over the salary cap. So in order to, I think what he's doing with the CBA is a great thing, because again, you want to level up the playing field, and you want to make every team competitive. But you get the small markets, unless you're like a Milwaukee, that's really tough to compete with the big guns. So in order for the league to be more financially stable and to grow and to make the league more competitive, I think you need to have it where it's more level field. And with the CBA, I think they're working towards that. And, I like what they're doing as far as, some of the rules that they're implementing to try to make players show up, things of that nature. So I think that's very imperative for the growth of the leagues. And overall, I think the league's in a great situation. And I think once they get past this couple of hiccups that they're having, I think the league's going to prosper even more. And then when you get into the international pot, that's going to make the league grow as well. So I think the league's in good hands.
So I like what it's doing. It brings me to something I talked about before, with what's happening with PGA and the Live and everything,
Mhm.
and how the Saudi Arabians who have a
Yeah.
unlimited cash
Mhm.
flow are
Exactly.
now kind of getting into sports in the United States and other places. So it's good for me because it's going to allow. I think at some point in the near future we're going to have a team that's going to be owned by this Saudi Arabian fund. Um, I like
Mhm.
the fact that this at least gives everybody an equal shot in theory. Like you're not saying, oh, we don't have a cap. Kind of like the NFL right before the salary cap when you go to San Francisco, Dallas, certain places, because the owners, like you were saying earlier, Con, have the money to just pay out of the box where everyone doesn't.
Mhm.
I think they've been going toward this. One of the reasons why they were doing, you could offer the extra year and extra money on the max contracts for players was to kind of give players an incentive to say, okay, well, if I stay here, I can make more than I can make anywhere else because they can give me that fifth year with
Right.
more money on it. So I think that's, and they've had the bird right. So different things they've done to kind of try
Mhm.
to help level it out over the years. But this kind of is that one that's a game changer. This is kind of one where you say, oh, okay, this is the one that should really help. You
Mhm.
think about, like I said, this Denver team. You think about the team we made the trade with in OKC. That team goes and gets one good veteran player with that young nucleus they have. That's a dangerous team, right? And
Absolutely.
this is an OKC team that has not been good since Russell Westbrook walked out the door.
Yeah.
They
Correct.
have been garbage on the court, but they've been building. They've been getting young players. They've been doing it the right way, and it's making sense. Um, you think about some of the other teams, the Detroit Pistons, for instance, back in the 80s and 90s, that was a great team. Right now, it has not been, but they're building. They're getting those young pieces. They're
Exactly.
making that team better over time. So
Mhm.
you give them this, and then they have, okay, everyone has the same amount that they can spend. Everyone's kind of locked into that same box. Now, you want to go outside and pay the luxury tax, that's on you, but they're punishing you more and more every year. So before you paid a certain amount, the second year paid a certain amount, and then whatever. Now they're saying every year that you're in the luxury tax, you're considered a repeat offender after the second year,
Good point.
taking away some stuff from you, and we're going to make you spend more money to keep those same players.
Mhm.
So that does make it interesting. It does, I think, help at least some of those guys that may not be all stars, but fringe second tier guys. Maybe not a superstar and an all star, but like a good solid player, a guy that you might at least consider for the all star teams. One of those guys is just below that tier or the bottom of that tier can
Mhm.
move around a little bit more because there's going to be more places that can pay them that still are going to have an opportunity because if you're doing things right, like Mike said, through the draft, if you're making your picks make sense and building your team, you're now going to be able to add guys because other teams are going to be like, oh, I'm not going to continue to pay you guys and stay in this luxury tax for 3 or 4 years if we're not winning championships. So I think it's a good move overall.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I'm there. No, I'm there with you. I think that again, kind of that flat Earth approach as far as how we're going to do this and how we're going to move forward as a league, and then you fragment it down as far as what the teams look like and the franchises look like. And you're right, you have to make those right decisions, and you're going to start to have an influx of changes in franchises. I think with some of the ownership at some point, right? That Phoenix is the one that is sticking out to me right now. But you may have some others that start to change, and I'm really looking at what's really taking place with the Nets. How does that look? What that stability in that organization looks like, just because of what we have seen in the last 10 years with ownership there. So there's a lot of changes that are coming in, and I think that's pointing all well as far as positive signs for the league. Positive signs, as we were talking earlier about those opportunities for players, right? So if you're dealing with cool, to your point, if we're dealing with issues as far as trying to help and create stability for that mid-range player on your franchise for salary and for talent, that creates better stability for them, right? So you're starting to build, as you mentioned earlier about, the old days when you had guys kind of just going to those teams where there was no cap, everybody kind of was loading up and nobody left, the free agency really wasn't a thing. So you kind of had those franchises that had players forever. So you have that loyalty, right? And that's one of the things that you lose with free agency. At some point is you start to lose the face of the organization. Like, who's the guy? Oh, he left. He went over here to go play with this team because, okay, we want to have a super team. So you lose that identity, right? You lose that loyalty within the market as far as trying to develop your fan base, right? And that's all it comes down to is who's going to support us. You know, the TV contracts are going to be there to kind of supplement this, but it comes down to what does it look like in your region as far as who's that team? Who are those guys that you actually look at and you can recall wearing your uniform that you're following, right? Those teams that you follow. So I think that's a big point to this. And I think that's sort of where I think the commissioner is pointing towards.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
That's why I got him as my co-host.
So, guys, any other thoughts? Anything else you guys want to tackle here?
No, I'm just honored to be with you guys. I think we're doing the damn thing, and again, I think the series probably going to go 6-7 games. Like we said, we just want a great series. I think that's what we're going to get, and looking forward for the next couple of maybe more games, and let's see what happens. And it's going to be a very interesting off season with all the things that are going on. We get the draft, we got free agency, we got all kinds of things going on. I think it's going to make the NBA even more interesting in the off season as well.
So I do have one other thing I wanted to mention. So I don't want to get into politics on this particular podcast, but I wonder who pushes who off the stage when the commissioner goes up and starts talking about the suspension that's going to come from the guy from Memphis, and who pushes Donald Trump off the stage as far as who gets the most attention coming from the fan base.
Ooh.
And I don't want to go into politics, but I just wonder where does that spotlight land?
I would think the coach of Memphis is going to push. I'm number one. And I think there's going to be 8,000 people want to push Trump off the stage, if you ask me.
Well, I do think it's interesting that you have that dynamic where, okay, Memphis is going to get some attention. Do they really want that attention, right? I think they have to deal with it, and there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be, I don't think it's a situation where it's going to be the spotlight on them forever, right? But it's going to be a bright spotlight on them as far as what's taking place, what's their reaction, what are their plans, because I think we can all agree they probably know what's coming already. It's just not been announced.
But you got to remember, too, what they're doing as well. Okay, they got rid of what they feel is one of the knuckleheads, Brooks. And now they got one guy that, okay, maybe Brooks might have been that bad influence on Ja. Now we got him out of there. So maybe we can use this as a teaching lesson for Ja and the rest of the Memphis team as well. So I think it's a good teaching lesson, a very expensive lesson for Ja, but I think it's a good teaching lesson. And I think, like you said, things gonna get better with Memphis. I think they need another leader, because they don't have no leaders on that team. So I think they need a good veteran to help them out. Again, show them how to be professional players. I think that'll be very important for their growth. But overall, I think they're going to be all right. And Ja might be gone half a year. Yeah, who knows? I don't know what's going to happen. But we'll see.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, guys, I appreciate you hanging out with me here on the show tonight. Hopefully next week we can be talking about a championship parade and when that's going to be, and how long I was crying.
One thing I want to say before we go off. Now, if you guys been reading my posts, my favorite ball player of all time is none other than Denver Nugget David Thompson. So I'm happy for him, even though he's not going to get the ring, although they probably should give it to him. But anyway, I'm happy for him, Dan Issel, all them guys that paid the dues. And it's good to see my man David Thompson in the audience. So I'm just want to give that a shout out.
I like it. I've seen a lot of Nuggets legends definitely in the stands for some of the games. when they were in Denver, of course. I've seen a couple at, I think, game 3 as well. Happy for all those because it took everything, right? Like some teams, the success just comes, it happens. Some teams like Denver, it's taken a while to get there, but they're starting to get there. So happy
Yes.
for, like you said, the organization. Hopefully, finish it off. But even if we don't, man, it's still been the best year in the history of the Denver Nuggets organization.
Shout out to Denver, man.
It is pretty cool to see those legends hanging around and reading how excited they were for the current team getting to the finals. It was just, I didn't know that they had that kind of relevance to the team or to what's really taking place. But it's really cool to see that they're engaged, they're part of this, and they had some hard luck in the ABA coming out of that. But that's one of those surviving franchises coming through the merger, which was cool to see. Yeah, and I certainly can follow Michael's admiration for David Thompson because that was the guy for a while.
Yeah, David Thompson was the truth. The NC State product.
Yeah,
definitely was.
Me, it just goes to show how old I am because I remember Denver won them in the ABA. Damn, I'm old. But anyway, I want to give a shout out to them. I mean, it's great for the organization. Alex English, I can name the whole damn. But anyway, it's been great. It's been great. I love it. I love it. So it's cool.
Absolutely. So for those of you that did hang out with us for a part of the show, appreciate that as well. For those of you that do see the replay for this, definitely appreciate you as well. We had some great conversation tonight, guys, and definitely enjoyed both of you. Hopefully we'll both be back next week. Mike, I'm basically talking to you.
Yeah. You already know.
Mike.
Khan better be here. Khan better be here.
So I gave Michael virtually the long tether line to good Wi-Fi tonight, so I think we're good.
Perfect.
Thank you. I need it.
All right, guys. So we're gonna hit the outro tonight a little different. We're gonna go ahead and throw in the our Empire Sports Empire Network hype video, so everybody can get an opportunity to see some of the other programs that are part of the network. And we're gonna be updating it soon, but get a chance to kind of see what else is out there. Check them out. A lot of other great people here. I mean, they're not us, but other great people as well. Check them out, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, y'all.